All right. So, I have recently come into a more awareness of my own limits as a professor and as a human being.
Do
And
tell.
so, I am identifying for the first time really significant barriers based on my disabilities. And that is kind of in relation to my auditory processing delay. And I think ADHD plays into this too, because I have the inattentive type of ADHD. That if I'm not super motivated and it's not just like compelling new dopamine information, I'm not having it. So I'm having to grade a lot of video submissions now for a course that I'm teaching, which is great because it's nice to see the students interacting in that regard and actually talking about the content versus just writing and regurgitating the information or, possibly submitting an AI report. So I love that piece. But I'm finding that personally, it takes me a lot more effort. It takes me way more I have to implement multiple topographies to sustain and keep up with what is happening. I'm having to make notes in addition to watching and pausing and rewinding and fast forwarding and doing all the things so that I can make sure that I'm catching the content, um, even with captions. So that is something that I have kind of been alerted to this past week, and it's very jarring because for the first time in my entire academic career, as a student or as a professor, the work is not focused on written topographies, and I never struggled with that. Um, but when it comes to the auditory piece, I do. um,
Yeah, I muted myself, so I didn't make any sound. Sorry. So I was like saying, I have a few questions. So this sounds, first of all, I think that for context purposes, the audience needs to know that these are like sometimes they're discussion posts. So that means
mm,
that students have to reply to other students' videos.
yeah,
So they might run into similar problems where there's no subtitles, and then they have to
right.
reply to a video without subtitles and then spend more time if they have auditory processing uh, disabilities or issues. So it's not just you. And then support for people with disabilities benefits everybody. I personally enjoy using subtitles, looking at subtitles. If I can make it so damn near every movie had subtitles, I would. I get the comedic timing. You can work with the subtitles to make them pop up at the right time. But that's first off. Two, I think that you said that the amount of time you spent grading has like substantially increased, right? Yeah.
Significantly. I would say triple, if not quadruple, the amount of time. Like, I spent probably 3 days last week on two or three assignments, which is
Hmm.
a big chunk for me. I'm
Yeah.
usually very quick, very efficient. I've been teaching now for several years. This is very different. And I think that's part of it too, is I'm trying to
Yeah.
accept that, okay, maybe I was just extra quick before, and now maybe this is more realistic. So is it realistic for me to take 3 days to grade two assignments? Maybe. I think it depends on what it is, but I'm willing to bet that it's not because the
Yeah.
turnaround has to be quick for students so they get that feedback more immediately.
Exactly. And because I just graded the same thing. You and I teach the same course. And one of the things that often happens when you like grade the entire class on an assignment, you kind of get into a flow where
Yeah.
you're like, okay, I need to see this for it to be full credit for this part. And we have a rubric. And then it's okay, so you need this and that. I don't see this. Or, and you're probably the same way. I always give comments if they don't earn full credit on what they missed.
Same.
So,
That's
because
what.
my policy is, if you miss points, you can do it again correctly to earn the points. That's behavior analytic. We want to see the behavior. If they have no opportunity to emit the right or correct behavior, then there is no learning, or we can't test for learning. So, we have to do that. So every time they're missing one piece, we have to explain it. And sometimes you have to explain it in a way that doesn't give away the answer, but still evokes the correct response. So
Mhm.
that's tough.
Yeah.
I, damn, I was gonna go somewhere with specifically the grading, but just it takes a long time, because you have
Yeah.
to listen and hear them out, and you have to go back and forth. Oh, this is it. And this is the reason why these changes are happening is because it's a response to AI.
Hmm.
And instead of students submitting written assignments, as a response to AI, we want them to submit videos of them talking about it, which totally on paper makes sense.
Yeah. It does. I do have challenges to that though that I did not consider until
Yeah.
figuring out my own struggles with this. And it was one of those things that I had to get my feet wet, if you will, first. But
Mm-hmm.
now I'm kind of like, well, there's got to be a better way to do this. I just don't know what to suggest. Um, I'm thinking now, like, as students are presenting these videos and kind of talking through it, um, I'm not one that tends to require a script, but some people do require a
Mm-hmm.
script. And I respect that because it can be intimidating putting on a camera and, now all of a sudden I'm being watched and I'm being recorded. Everything I do is being scrutinized and graded
Mm-hmm.
and, feedback's being provided. I get that. Um, who's to say that a student will not generate an AI script and then use that as their discussion? Well, they're still not telling me what they know. They're just regurgitating what AI has told them to regurgitate. And I actually challenge it might be more difficult to identify AI use because now I'm really good at looking through a paper and saying, hey, the verbiage here is just really weird. And that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
one of the first red flags to me. Like, I'm going to go through and I'm going to scan. If words just are not generally in the repertoire, of a student at master's level or doctorate level, then I'm just gonna say that that's probably a red flag. And then sure enough, I go searching. It's kind of like with plagiarism. If we suspect
Yeah.
it, then we go digging, and then we go further, and then confirmation bias could happen, but generally we're not wrong about that. So I don't know what you kind of think about it, but that's kind of where I've landed on it, and it kind of makes me more frustrated because now I think I'll have a more difficult time, especially with my own limitations.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. And I think to add to what you're saying, um, a lot of this could not be foreseen without us actually implementing and experiencing
Absolutely.
this. So the people that designed the course are trying to figure out in this new AI driven world
Yeah.
how to respond appropriately. So, as a good university would do, as I believe our university is doing, we are iterating the process and responding to the way that the environment changes. One of the things that you brought up is, they're learning these things, right? And sometimes they write a script and because it might be difficult if you're still learning the behavior and you're trying to be accurate. It's difficult to just speak about it without a script, right? So you're still in this phase where your progress is still low. You can't get to fluency until you really know this stuff well. And we can't exactly expect these students to really know this stuff well. I mean, I was correcting them on things that it's like, yeah, you're in this first class, this is early. You shouldn't know all of this stuff correctly. You're reading the paper,
Right.
trying to understand, try to get it. So making a script totally makes sense when you're trying to be accurate and you haven't reached that level of fluency yet, much less retention, expansion, and extension to be able to generalize and adapt the information further, right? And we want to get to these areas, but we're right now testing really for accuracy. The video kind of looks for fluency, but we can't necessarily expect that from students who are still grasping the material for one of the first times and trying to make sense of it how it exists in the real world.
Yeah, and we throw so much content as students at
Oh.
master's level because of the
Hmm.
board exam requirements and everything. And it's like, I understand the necessity to get all the content out there, especially in the first few courses, because those are really overwhelming. I consider that sink or swim time. Like, either you're going to buckle down and you're going to try to get it together and figure it out, or you're just going to decide, you know what, maybe this isn't for me because I don't want to put in the time and the effort and all that. So, I mean, in a way, it could save students money in the long run by not having to go through the course sequence if they realize it's not a fit early on. But
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, it's like, I also understand the necessity of having to expose students to all these different, very challenging at times concepts that, they're going to have to know so that they can pass a board exam and demonstrate fluency out in applied practice and not harm people in the process.
Absolutely.
So there are so many different contingencies pulling in different directions here too, and also mentioning that we're asynchronous for the most
Yeah.
part. Like, we do a hybrid type model, but we are for the most part asynchronous. And so it's not just a situation where we're in a classroom setting all the time and we can ask a student for a verbal response spontaneously and we get it delivered back to us. No, these are pre-planned responses that are similar to that of a paper. It's just delivered with a different learning channel.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Exactly. And I don't know. I really feel for the people that have to design courses because I just designed a course, the instructional design course. Um,
That's
ironically,
amazing.
and it's a lot, and the students have to really learn a lot in a little bit of time. And it's like, how do you balance the fact that they're students who are also working full time, and we want them to get to their program in a reasonable amount of time to be able to have that bump in pay, to be able to get through it and everything. So what is the appropriate, level of pace that we need to have them responding at? It's a difficult, lift, but I think that one of the things that we're realizing is the first people that are hurt are those with disabilities. The
Oh,
first
for
people
sure.
that hurt are the disenfranchised, the people that don't have the resources, the people that don't have accessibility inputs provided within the resources and materials provided. So those are and those will be the first line to get hit the hardest, and then the other students, the students that don't have strong learning histories that bump their behavior up to high levels of fluency. Then you have the more, mid-level students who are, just getting by B level, quote unquote. And then furthest along, least likely to be affected, are those consistent A level students. And it's really instructional design. It's all an instructional design concern that oftentimes you don't learn until you get learner feedback and you say, oh, the learner had this. So it's not, we don't want to blame the designer, we blame the design. You know what I mean? We got to get the
Yeah.
ego away from the course. You know what I mean? Don't
Yeah.
say, oh, yeah, they're terrible. No, we just learned that our instructional processes need to be improved or iterated upon to increase the probability that learning occurs in the future or better practices when it comes to grading.
Yeah, absolutely. And then throwing the AI piece on top of it makes it even more
Hmm.
convoluted and complex, and it's such a challenge. And that's the thing. Like, I come to this discussion with just having the realization that it's a significant barrier for me. So, like, I don't have great suggestions to offer. And that's the thing, is I think that there's a lot of labor that comes on the behalf of disabled individuals in particular, where I have noticed this as a pattern on research projects that I collaborate with, and in spaces where disability is, prioritized and accommodated for, or attempted to be accommodated for, I guess I should say, where, we have really good intentioned people who are like, yeah, we want to do what we can to help. How can we help you? And then we have to come up with the ways to support ourselves, which is also a challenge. Like, I wasn't diagnosed until I was 37. And so I went my whole entire life thinking that there was just something wrong with me and I needed to pull myself up by my bootstraps and get it
Mm-hmm.
together because that's what society told me to do. And so I'm still in this space. It's been, what, 4 or 5 years since my diagnoses. And I'm still struggling at knowing, first off, when I'm becoming dysregulated or when I'm starting to be overstimulated. My spouse has to identify those sometimes for me. So those are learning opportunities. But then taking it another step, knowing that it's a problem, because it took me like 2 weeks to figure out this was a problem in my course that I'm teaching.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm trying to figure out, okay, but now how can I work through this? And now I'm halfway
Yeah.
through the course, and like it's becoming a bigger issue. And so the emotional labor and the guilt and like the feelings of inadequacy are all real. Like, and I'm kind of muddling through all of that right now, and it's hard. And I
Mm-hmm.
know, like, I'm reaching out to the accessibility folks to try to get accommodations in place and figure out if they have ideas. But do you know how long it takes to get those things in place? Like, it
Yeah.
takes a pretty good amount of time because everybody's busy. Everybody has a lot of stuff they're managing. And, me adding on to the list of people who need accommodations, I'd rather put the students first. I'd
Yeah.
rather get them taken care of, and then, I can be on the back burner 100%. But that doesn't make it any better because I know that they're waiting significant amounts of times, and then they're probably being asked for the same thing. Well, how can we provide support? What kind of accommodations do you need? I don't know. That's why I'm here. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I need some help. Otherwise, that emotional labor cost is significant.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think that that's really important to point out that the entire concern is is rests under the desire to support students,
Right.
the desire to support students efficiently, quickly, have their behavior shaped rapidly after they've submitted their assignments. Because let's be honest, if the assignments due at Sunday at 11:59, I was a student that would get it in at 11 o'clock on Sunday. Sometimes, that's just do tomorrow, do tomorrow. So, so you're constantly trying to support students. One of the things that I did notice when it comes to the captions as well, because sometimes it just auto captions. So sometimes it's
Mm-hmm.
just there.
Sometimes, yeah.
Students who are older, who speak slower, who speak more clearly, are more likely to get the auto captions. But students who maybe English is their second language, maybe they
Yeah.
have an accent,
Dialects.
maybe
Mm-hmm.
they have a different dialect, maybe they use slang, maybe they're using technical terms
Yeah.
that the system always underlines, like sometimes antecedent, sometimes behavior. You know what I mean? Like there are
Yeah.
certain words that the system reinforcer that just it'll flag as incorrect spelling.
Yeah.
Those students are less likely to get the captions auto selected or auto captions, and so it impacts them more heavily as well. So then it's like, well, should we just have them submit the script if they write a script? And then what about the students who don't write a script? You know what I mean? It's a complex issue that could have never been identified if we don't actually provide the opportunity to respond. We see them respond. We don't say the learner's wrong. We don't say the designer is wrong. We say the design is wrong, you know, because we're all learning how to improve instruction and how to improve our opportunities to be instructed. So I think that that's so important. And when you have that mindset, that ideology, then you can be so much more effective in your instructional design.
I completely agree. And it's the thing that I tend to kind of apply as a framework to every sort of like discussion that I seem to have recently with everybody. Are we basing this on feeling or are we basing this on fact? And it goes to everything from interactions on social media about like your stance on politics to instructional design to receiving feedback from your instructor. So all of it, it's like, am I acting right now out of defensiveness? Am I feeling attacked? Am I feeling sad? It's like for an autistic person to have to like break that down all the time, that's what I do. And so it's easy for me to look at a situation and say, hey, you're not separating your feelings out. You need to take those feelings out of the equation and simply look at the facts. Here's where we are. I think a lot of people really do struggle with that. But as an autistic person, I can compartmentalize it really well. So, yay. One advantage.
And as a person who's a child, and as we're learning more and more, maybe a little bit closer to ADHD than I thought. Is that a Patrick shirt? A Patrick Star
Oh, it
shirt?
absolutely is. Yeah, absolutely.
I started seeing the eyes, and I'm like, that's got to be Patrick.
Oh, it's Patrick. 100%.
No,
I
this
love
is Patrick.
No, firmly grasp it.
Too bad, SpongeBob. You gotta ride the eels.
Oh my gosh. Patrick is
That was
the
my
best.
favorite.
Although I
Yes.
identify more with Squidward, obviously.
Oh. The older you get, the more you realize Squidward is right. There needs to be a shirt that says
So right.
Squidward is right.
About everything. Absolutely.
Yes.
I find there are definitely. It's so funny because I can identify with so many different characters in varied ways and contexts. So I'm SpongeBob in that I like my routine. I like knowing what's expected of me. I try to do everything that I'm used to really, really well and perfect. And I'm very hypercritical of myself where, SpongeBob missed the pickles or whatever, under the bully's tongue. We're going into a tailspin and nothing works right. 100% relatable if you're on the spectrum. 100%. Because your whole world gets rocked. But, I've definitely got the attitude and demeanor of Squidward. I have the love of ice cream that Patrick has. I'm going to disregard the banner that says do not cross, and I'm going to instead say it says ice cream, and I'm going to run out, and I'm going to get a butt cramp. Like, 100% understand and relate to all of it. Except maybe Pearl. I love Pearl, but I can't identify with her.
Same with Mr. Krabs for me. But I do identify sometimes with Sandy. I feel like
Oh, yeah.
there are my special interests that I'm really into. So yeah, that's our SpongeBob second right there.
I love that. I feel like everything could be related to SpongeBob, though, so we should always
Yep.
put SpongeBob second.
Yes, I used to have this call and response for the kids if I wanted to get their attention. I would be like, are you ready, kids? And they'd say, aye, Captain. And I'd be like, I can't hear you. So one time to be loud and yell, and it gets them to attend. And I had another one that I saw on TikTok that I used that they hated. I said, hear ye. And they're supposed to respond, all hail the king. And I was with middle schoolers, especially the middle school girls
man.
hated that one.
I bet.
So that one was put away real quick.
I love the SpongeBob intro. That's so great. I try to embed as many quotes in my everyday life as I possibly can. My current vocal stem is, "Oh brother, this guy stinks."
Yes.
I love that. I love that.
That
guy.
one's a classic. Yeah. No. Yeah. SpongeBob is excellent. But back to disabilities and working with them. I think that what we're really recognizing is when you're at this part, when you're a professor, I'm learning a lot about being on this side, especially being an emerging quote unquote new professor, is there's a lot of behind the scenes things that professors really work to fix that students don't see. And I think that when the university detects an issue or a problem, they try to go through processes to fix it. But it's a big system. And to make system level changes, has to be a big lift and a lot of changes. Everybody has to identify it. Everybody has to be on the same page. Everybody has to be told. And when you consistently have big changes, as sometimes you do need and you should, it can be difficult and frustrating for everybody involved because it's like, oh man, everything's changing again and again. So where are we now? What are we supposed to be doing? Am I doing things right? And it's like, well, we're changing it to make it better, ideally. And then, sometimes the changes need improvements, and that's what we're learning. And you can only learn that if you make the change.
Yeah, and with the understanding also that those varied levels of change that need to happen, especially at an organization, is so time consuming and so involved. There might be something that you see in a course that you provide feedback on, and I definitely take like those forms and I pass them on to the people that need to be passed on. You may not see that change implemented for like a year
Yeah,
because you need to go through all these different channels, and understandably so. It's a system of, I hate the term checks and balances because of the government
yeah,
and everything right now, but that's ultimately what it is. It's supposed to go through several different people, several committees, doing all these things just to make sure everything is in place, so that one person doesn't squeak by and do something and it be, absolutely terrible. So
yeah,
with the understanding that those things take time, and this is also true for research projects. Those things take significant amount of time. They take a lot of resources that may have requirements that we may not agree with. Now, I don't do a lot of grant funded research. I've personally never taken one on as a first author or anything, but
hmm
some of those requirements are pretty rigid. And
yeah,
so I'm kind of involved in a project like that right now where there's a lot of things you can't change, but there are some things you can be in control of. It's just very specific as to what those are and what those aren't. And
yeah,
that can be frustrating.
yeah, yeah. You're talking to me. I'm going back and forth with IRB right now. We on the third version,
Oh
just
no.
because I suck at IRB, and I feel like I'm. This is my first
Are
time
you
going through
on
this
the IRB
IRB.
though?
Yeah, so I'm learning. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just this is my first time going through the IRB for this university, and I try to do things by the book, but I do research that's really out there and nobody's really
Same.
seen this before, and they have a lot of questions or comments or like do this, no, do that, you know what I mean? So it's not your typical, oh, we're just going to do the BST with a slight tweak, you know what I mean? Not that that's a
Yeah.
problem, but I mean typically, it's like, okay, well, it's do this, that, and the third, and I'm like, no, we're working with inner behavior here. We're working with, systemic and interpersonal racism. It's like, oh, okay, well, how do we approach this? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's a different ball game.
That's yet another barrier to conducting any sort of research outside of the autism discrete trial training
Yeah.
BST pieces. And it's frustrating because those, I don't know, I've had both experiences. I've had times where going through IRB with a novel type study has been fine because basically it's like, well, it doesn't look like you're hurting anybody, so we're going to go ahead and approve it. And so I get through
hmm
quicker. But most of the time, that's not the case. I will say that when I needed my thesis and my dissertation approved from IRB, that was the case. I feel like they just kind of like let it go. Not that,
hmm
I was doing anything harmful or, trying to hurt anybody, but I could definitely tell I didn't get as many questions about what I was actually doing as part of the procedure, but
hmm
more along like, the forms don't match and this needs to, like what I would
Yeah.
consider like administrative type things.
Yeah. That's the stuff that I miss too. It's like those little harmonization, harmonize this, the
Right.
consent form with this form and that form. And but I have not done a lot of IRB submissions. So once I get this down, oh, I'm gonna be
Yeah.
dangerous. I'm gonna be efficient. I'm gonna be submitting all types of stuff. But I just gotta get through my first tries, and then I'm like, damn, they gonna be happy to see me. Right now, I know they're gonna be like, oh god,
What is this guy in? Oh,
yep,
brother, this guy
this guy
stinks.
stinks.
Oh, brother. Oh my gosh. See, it
Oh,
works. It works in
yeah,
everyday life
yeah,
in many, many contexts. No, I think that
absolutely,
you'll be fine. And
yeah,
that the more you do, the more fluent you become with it and the better that you get at it, just like anything else. But, if you
exactly.
are a novel topic researcher, just be prepared to sometimes have to really break things down way more than you might think you have to do it
Yeah,
initially. Just be prepared for
and
that.
and I'm not mad at that. That helps me honestly, because then it
Yeah,
makes me understand. Sometimes I'm communicating things in a way that these are the ways that it has been communicated in the past, but to new people who have never heard it, sometimes you have to explain it differently, and then it
right.
hits different, and people understand it better, and then that just that helps me, use plain English better, which I think is super important.
Absolutely. And that's something that our students need to be doing as well, because you want your research to be accessible, and that also includes many individuals being able to identify, comprehend what you're trying to do, and then,
Hmm.
explain it as well. And that's one of my biggest pet peeves about ABA is that we have this language and we have all this jargon and stuff like that. I really appreciate that we have the priority of translating the jargon and all of
Hmm.
that, but there are definitely times that we need to hit that a little harder, I feel.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And yeah, I think to also the point about, I almost forgot about this, but to the point about accessibility as well, I think we should talk a little bit about learning history because, um, talking about my experience here, I thought about all the different courses I've taken. I've taken online courses, I've taken on campus courses, I have done kind of the gambit on all of that. And I was thinking, how has this not come up for me before? But thinking back to it, everything I did was written, everything I did was reading. So it was all, text based versus
Hmm.
vocal delivery and auditory input. And so those learning channels are so different, um, that I just hadn't been exposed to those before. And so, talking about learning history, me being brand new at this whole, okay, well, I found the asynchronous online learning environment so accommodating before that now I'm running into this wall. Now I have to advocate for myself, and this is a challenge because I don't really know how it's going to be perceived. I don't know what it's going to be
Hmm.
met with. And so it's scary because you worry about being discriminated against, you worry about having microaggressions against you, you worry about, you know, your job and it being
Hmm.
protected.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of fear that comes with this, and I know students face those fears too because of what they've been exposed to before.
All the time. And this talk about learning histories and learning channels, I think is super important because I had a comment. Somebody asked me like about learning channels, and they were like, "So, what would you recommend for people with dyslexia or dyscalculia or ADHD?" And they were trying to like it seemed like they wanted me to give a prescription for people with a specific disability or identity. It's like, okay, you have this disability, so you get this treatment, you have
Yeah,
this one, this treatment. And I was
right.
like, it really depends. I don't think it
Mm-hmm.
works like that because one person with dyslexia, their dyslexia might present differently than a different person with dyslexia that's been identified, especially due to their learning history. So, I wonder with your audio processing difficulties, like if we measured like the learning channel with like phonemic awareness, which is where you break sounds down and you kind of repeat the sound or whatever. I wonder where you would be at compared to a peer at your age that was, non-disabled or not yet disabled, honestly. And then I wonder if there could be like fluency, frequency building exercises to build you up, because we just don't know. And
Right.
you shouldn't have to go through that, you know what I mean? But I think
But
that
here we
the
are.
converse yeah, exactly, the conversation goes to what supports are actually out there and what supports are people providing, because
Yeah.
that's a support that one you would have to work twice as hard than the next person. You'd have to go through frequency building, which the next person might not have to. You'd have to do all this stuff to try to be able to do that. Whereas, captions captions, I mean, very simple, helps everybody.
Right.
um so it's an important discussion because a lot of people think, oh, you're special education, so that means that, if for this person you give what you have to give that person that. It's like that's not how it works. We learn how to specialize instruction for any individual to more likely induce learning.
Yeah.
That's really what it is. So yeah.
It's a very neurotypical approach to assume that everybody fits under one nice little, you know, category, if you will,
Yeah.
of, oh, well, you have dyslexia, so therefore all of you are the same. That's what a
Yeah.
privilege to be able to assume that, right?
Yeah.
So, any disability is a spectrum, and that's important to note. Like, we tend to talk about autism as a spectrum, but every disability is a spectrum because you have varying experiences with sensory components. You have varying levels of exposure with processing time, various levels of, I mean, just within ADHD, look at how many subtypes there are. I had no idea
Yeah.
there were so many subtypes of ADHD until I was diagnosed, and I didn't believe that. And then the
Mm-hmm.
neuropsych had to break it down. He's like, no, here's how your specific ADHD is affected. I'm like, oh man, I feel seen. I didn't
Yeah.
realize that was ADHD. And so, like, I even worked in the field while I was
Mm-hmm.
diagnosed with this, and I didn't know. So, kind of being aware of that and just kind of letting people tell you their experiences and individualizing things for the learner. And that's the thing, like, I don't want a learner in my course to go through this, like, these
Mm-hmm.
feelings, and I don't want them to have to struggle because the material, as we've already talked about, is really freaking hard. And
Mm-hmm.
so now we're putting emotional labor on top of that really challenging material. And, like, that's the last thing I want to do. I want to make it as easy for you to understand and follow so that you can be successful and understand these concepts. And it's such a disservice if we don't do that. And, as you were talking to your point earlier about captions with, like, dialects and everything, that's when I freaking need them the most. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I struggle so much. It's not that I don't want to understand other individuals, but I was raised in the United States. I was raised in the southern U.S. The only dialect I was really exposed to consistently was a southern drawl, if you
Mm-hmm.
will. And so anybody from another culture who has a very thick accent or dialect, I will preface with, for just completely letting you know that I have an audio processing delay. I'm not, I'm trying
Yeah.
to follow and I'm trying to understand. You may have to repeat yourself to me several times. Like, I'll say what like 3 or 4 times and then I'll usually give up. But
Mm-hmm.
that's when I need those subtitles and they aren't given. It's so
Yeah.
frustrating.
No, I would argue that the fact that you want subtitles this badly, the fact that you ask for people to repeat themselves multiple times, is because you desperately want to understand what they are
Yes.
saying. Whereas some people just, oh, whatever they said, and it's like, oh, I can't pronounce your name, so I'm just going to give you a one that I can
Oh
pronounce that fits
no.
better in my mouth.
Oh no.
Back to a little bit about what you were saying with variation and disability. Nature is rarely binary. And I'm looking at you, sex, you know what I mean? Male, female, like the expression of a bunch of our biology is rarely binary. It's more than likely a spectrum. Because you are unable to grasp the nuance across that spectrum and can only see the visible colors and are unable to detect the ultraviolet light, does not mean it doesn't exist. And that double entendre hit hard as hell. Those who get it will get it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that. It's so true. I picture a particular type of person who might say, "Oh yeah, if you have ADHD, you must do all of these things," and um, it's
Get
the
the checklist
demographic
out.
we tend to talk about a lot in vague terms, but yeah, we understand what each other's saying. Um, so yeah, I there is a very good checklist that I think you and I both would run through and say, "Yep, yep, yep, yep,
Oh
yep,
my God.
got it." It's
Oh,
we don't fit into that. Basically,
nope.
spoiler alert: we do not fit into that.
Nope. And I'm happy not to. I think
Yeah,
being weird, like if we let's call it being weird. Being weird is cool and interesting.
yeah,
Being normal
we're
is
good.
boring. Yeah, being normal is boring. And I air
Absolutely.
quotes, air quotes.
I take weird as like a symbol of pride. I
Yeah,
just
same.
don't care that, I'm gonna give a little story here. So my spouse and I went to a winery this past weekend because he really loves
Ooh.
pickles, and they were doing like a pickle palooza thing. So they had like pickle slushes and like pickle drinks and stuff like that. And so we went to that, and I was basically looking around, and I do this thing where I'm in public a lot, and I'll look around and I'll be like, wow, I don't look like I fit in here because like I wear SpongeBob shirts and I like dress gothy sometimes, and like I'm covered in tattoos, and I don't look conventional. And so we're sitting at a winery. You can probably imagine what everyone around me looked like. And so my spouse and I just kind of laugh about it. It's just like one of these things is not like the other.
Hmm.
And I'm like, would you rather have this, or are you cool with this? He's like, no, I'd much rather have like color and fun and excitement in my life versus live, laugh, love. And
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
kind of our motto for it. It's like, and no offense if you do the live, laugh, love thing, but that's just kind of my catch all generalized term for not me.
Somebody's looking in their house at their live, laugh, love sign
No,
right
I'm
now,
sorry.
feeling incredibly offended.
Uh, Out of our 10 listeners that I
Shout
probably
out to you, 10
marginalized.
listeners.
I marginalized like 5 of those 10 listeners, and now we're back down to 5. Oops, sorry.
Oh,
I mean,
this this
I
content
have to.
creation thing is so hard.
It is so hard because everyone's going to be offended by anything. And, you know,
Yeah.
to the live, laugh, love point, the current garden flag that I'm actually looking at in my yard right now says live, laugh, lobotomy. That's my take on it. Because to be fair, I would have been lobotomized in like
Real
the
quick,
early
real quick,
1900s.
real quick.
Burned
Yeah,
at the stake in the 1800s. Like,
this podcast could get real dark if we talked about what happened to us, and even 100 years
oh, good
ago.
grief.
Go back a
Oh,
hundred more years. Oof, 100 more years. Ooh, you know what I mean.
yeah,
Time travel is
things get
only
real
kind to
weird.
white straight males.
Oh man, we could talk about time travel too. We should have like an episode where we talk about time travel in behavior analytic terms and like the nuances of time travel as nerds.
Oh,
I think that would
absolutely,
be really fun.
absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
anyway,
Anyway, um, I have a topic that is totally different.
yeah, let's shoot.
Uh, all right, I'm gonna share my screen. Obligatory me saying that.
Yeah, everyone
Just
has
share
to say
entire
it.
screen.
Also, am I on
Yep.
mute? All right.
Yes,
Can
yes,
everyone hear
yes.
me?
So here is, bro, can we just look at this? Oh, we're gonna look at this.
We
Okay.
can. That's
So,
gonna be a challenge.
yes. We're gonna look at the highlighted section. I'm gonna read it aloud for the audience in the class. Figure 10 shows the use of precise measurement for weight loss. The pinpoint was reach, mouth, bite, food. The use of bite count allowed for an exact amount of food of movement cycle which determined input of food. The protege, an author of this book, found that while weighing 250 pounds, approximately 184 bites of food were consumed daily. The number of movement cycles 0.184 per minute was maintaining that 250 pounds, a weight gain of 55 pounds in a period of 13 years. To reverse the slight acceleration in weight to a sharp deceleration, a phase change shift control of bytes per minute was initiated. The reduction of bytes from 0.184 per minute to 0.65 median was the only turn page was the only oh, we're not showing it. Hold on. Was the only change. Drinks were not counted. The same foods were eaten only in smaller quantity. The bite count medium ranged from zero point zero 0.05 and zero point zero 0.07 for the next 13 weeks and resulted in a weight loss of 31 pounds and a steady deceleration. Basically, at the end of it, he lost a total of 60 pounds. The so we can also see his standard acceleration chart right there, which is, deciding to drop the amount of food eaten. So that's cool. The reason why I bring this up is because I am going to be getting married next year and I want to lose some weight. So I was weighing myself once a month, every month, working out. I decided that's not the me weighing myself. This is me weighing myself. I'm gonna put myself on
Wow,
blast.
you're actually throwing it out there. That's
Yeah, who
I
cares? I don't care.
I would not.
I'm 6'2.5". So I started out this year at 238 pounds. And I stopped drinking and I stopped smoking marijuana throughout until where we are now, which is May 19th, 2026. And I started this food thing where I'm measuring the amount of bites that I'm eating. So Monday, here are my splits: 17. This next meal, I got up to 25. And the last meal, I ended with 53 bites. And yesterday, you can see my bites right there: 31 to 32. I had a little snack. 34 to 57. Some notes are that I've been eating faster since I started this, and I have been taking bigger bites. So I'm not changing. I'm changing what I eat. I don't do one meal that's consistent every day or a consistent foods every day. I'm not counting calories. I'm not doing any of that. I'm just going to, for the next week or so, measure my amount of bites, and then I'm going to reduce the amount of bites and see if there's a change in my weight. We'll see what happens. I was told by someone that they knew somebody who tried this and they just ended up eating bigger bites. And there's clearly a lot of problems with the way this intervention is designed, especially when you talk about controlling for different variables. But when you're in the applied settings, sometimes you have to make concessions. What think you, Robin?
I just feel like to get to the end goal, you could do it in a way that could make more sense or be more efficient. Um, Not that there's anything wrong. I think it's really creative and clever. But like you said, there's a lot of confounding variables that can come into the play of, especially with like, my first thought was, well, you're not gonna, unless you're me, you're not eating the same thing like every single day.
Yeah,
Because I do same foods pretty much every single day except weekends, and then that's my dopamine ADHD eating versus my autism rigid eating. So, you've got to have that constant, but also like calorie counting sucks, even if you're using apps. So I get the appeal of doing the bites, but also to me, I don't know. I would struggle at doing that. Are you like using a clicker as you like eat?
I have this finger counter.
Okay.
So every time I take a bite, I just press
Right.
this and put it on my finger. So it's it was hard at first, not to lie, because it's like
Yeah.
every time I bite, I gotta click
Right.
or count. But I mean, the more you practice, the more you become fluent, the easier it becomes. Um, and I'm learning a lot about what I eat and how I eat. So
I think that the mindfulness piece is definitely the big advantage here, and that's what I
hmm
would have assumed without like looking at this as a research study, if you will. Um,
hmm
but if I were reviewing this, I would just want more information. I would want to know, like, what exactly are you eating? I would probably want to see not only a trend for like bites, but also the weight loss, and
yeah,
also like different food groups and introducing different food groups as you like, go along the study. I don't know. It would be really interesting to have it done in a very structured manner that could be
hmm
looked at for publication that those who gatekeep would allow, I guess, if you will.
yeah,
I don't know. It's interesting. Would it work for me? Probably not, because
hmm
I would take bigger bites. I would contrive what I'm taking bites of, and I
yeah.
would. I always try to outsmart the system, and that's the thing, is you've got to kind of assume your learner's going to do that too. Now, if
hmm
you're the one in control of your own behavior and your own study, I'm just kind of curious how accountable you are to yourself. So that would just vary.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And one of the things that that's really interesting is like, so one of the things I noticed is like the first day I had already been flying the whole day, so I was fasting, but it was involuntary fasting.
Yep.
And I finally got home and I had a sandwich, right? And I ended up eating half the sandwich in like 7 bites. But yesterday, I had a bowl of fruit like strawberries, blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, right? Usually I just eat them one at a time. But now that I'm doing this bite, I'm grabbing as much as can fit in my mouth, damn near choking,
Yeah,
pause, and
that's funny.
eating them. And it was more bites, but the bite of a sandwich with all that bread and stuff versus the bite of fruit is very different. A
Yeah,
big problem also is that last night my fiance made some incredible chocolate chip cookies. And
one bite.
one of the, yep, one of the things is reactivity. So I probably, if I wasn't doing this, would have had 3 or 4 cookies. These are really big cookies, but who's counting?
Right.
Now that I'm counting, I only had 2 cookies. So that's a part of the reactivity before the intervention begins, just collecting baseline data I've identified as well, you know?
Hmm.
So there are all these varying factors which apply on me when I'm doing this intervention. And usually with interventions, when you want to be scientific, you want to control for as many variables as possible. But when you're in applied settings, you're not in the lab, the control isn't as tight. Sometimes you got to do what you
Right.
can. Sometimes you got to do what is available for you to be able to do with what tools and environmental control and contriving you can have. So if this works and it works, you know what I mean, you have to really put out in
Yeah.
air quotes, it'll be really interesting because like also how much am I working out, you know what I mean, how much is my
Right.
movement, there's so many
You
variables
have
that
health
add into this
concerns.
factor. Exactly, like what if like my father and my older brother both got diabetes around my age, right?
Yeah.
So there, my metabolism is not what it used to be. There's so many things, but yeah.
Well, also as you were kind of talking, so I think it's easy for you and I to kind of talk about us going the way of like taking larger bites because that's definitely what I would be doing. But there's also the piece anytime we're working with a behavior that has to do with food consumption or eating or anything like that, we have to really be cautious ethically
Hmm.
because of the potential for developing disordered eating.
Absolutely.
And not not that that's what our focus is or we're concerned about the original study or anything like that. But
Hmm.
I just think that it would be amiss for us not to discuss that piece because I could see that going. There's a lot of relevant discussions, especially with like actors in Hollywood right now,
Yeah.
about appearing emaciated and us normalizing that. And as a child of the 90s who grew up with the Kate Moss ideal standard of beauty, and if you're not a size 2, then you're obese,
Yeah.
I could easily see it becoming an issue where um, the fewer bites I take, the better. And that means if I take 0 bites in a day, perfect, I'm going to lose weight. Yeah, you will, but that doesn't mean it's the right way. And
Exactly.
I struggle with some disordered eating myself in different ways, but if the scale moves to a certain level, then I go into a tailspin, and so I've got to work through that. And
Yeah.
maybe this is something that I could do to help work through some of it.
Yeah. And you gave me 2 really important thoughts just with what you were saying. One, smoothies exist. So like
That's true. Those aren't bites. Those are
yeah,
sips.
exactly. So got to start counting sips. um, and then 2, that gets to this really big concern, the looks maxing community. Have you looked into this yet?
I haven't. What is this?
Oh my God. So it's basically eating disorders for men, especially young men, red pill, alt right pipeline, eating disorders. So, and even more than that, body dysmorphia
Yeah.
to a point where there's this guy named Clavicular. Oh my God, you're gonna learn a whole bunch right now. Yes,
Clavicular? That's like someone's
yes.
gamer tag. That's not a name.
So he
Clavicular.
named himself Clavicular, and he does this thing called, oh my God. So We have come to the point where if you are a certain age, you should stop listening. He does this thing called bone smashing. So he wants to get a chiseled jaw, and what he would do is he would get a hammer and chisel his jaw or smash his
What?
jaw so that it can try to
That's
get
not
into
how
the
that
shape he thinks.
works.
And he would give himself micro fractures. And he is online often. And when you really delve into it, it's like it's clear this person, one, he's autistic. Two, he has severe body dysmorphia to the point to where he's
Right.
literally he said that he would have to have the hammer taken away from him by his parents. Like they would hide the tools and stuff in the house. And the problem is he has a lot of children, teens, early 20s,
Yeah.
maybe mid 20s,
Following him.
people following him, following what he's doing. There's a whole community called Looks Maxers where they're maximizing their looks ideally, so that they can become Giga Chads and they can mog other people. And look, this is all these stupid terms, just really bad terms that are, but really, it all comes from like what I see is people are online so much, they're seeing other people, they're seeing themselves. And because of the filters, because of the AI, because of the editing of the way that people are presented online that don't even look like how they're presented, people
Mm-hmm.
see themselves and see faults in themselves, especially young people, young men and women, and they compare themselves and they think that they have a problem with how they look and they should look how the people online look, which reinforces the body dysmorphia. And it is such a huge concern for young men and women. I'm like, I've been thinking about this for a long time, and I was thinking like this would be a great opportunity for an inner behavior
Yeah,
intervention.
it
Like,
would.
I love my body, my body's beautiful, and there needs to be more than that, of course. But just seeing this landscape is so concerning to me, especially because like this guy, clavicular, he has done like meth and a whole bunch of benzodiazepines, diazepines, I don't know, a whole bunch of
Right.
other drugs, to get his body to be what he thinks is ideal. And people are saying like his body's falling apart, like he's
Right.
driving himself into an early grave trying to do this. And the thing is, he keeps on saying that like society will treat you better if you look better. Which the problem with that is there is a minute amount of truth to that, but to get to where he's trying to get to, he's doing all these harmful things and being online saying harmful things that can influence others to live a more to live a life that could be unhealthy for them, and then grow ideals that are unhealthy, because it shouldn't be that you get treated better because people think you look better. That's not right. That's not okay. So
Mm.
sorry
That's
to
a
bring us down
lot.
that pipeline. Yeah.
No, I think it's really interesting, and I definitely agree. I think that a body dysmorphia approach would be so interesting, and I think that would be actually socially significant
Hmm.
to study. But yeah, it makes me think of the people that get multiple surgeries and everything. And,
Hmm.
I will agree. And I don't like that it is that way, but society will treat you better if you do have attractiveness or physical
Hmm.
appearance. And I think they've like actually studied that. It's like facial symmetry and, certain pieces or whatever. But that said, you can go to a point where you go past that piece, and that's what I see with like I follow a lot of like reality TV, and it seems that with
Hmm.
reality TV stars, they like to go full into the plastic surgeries to the point
Yep.
where it's unnatural. Think Kim Kardashian, think
Yep.
Kylie Jenner, think anybody from the 90 Day Fiance franchise who has dabbled with surgery. Um,
Hmm.
some of those bodies now are to this point where it's not a normal human body. It's not a filtered human body, even. It is
Yeah.
beyond that recognition. And so it's like you're drawing the negative attention at that point on this like meter of
Hmm.
acceptability. So it's like your brain is telling you this one thing, but yet you're past that point, and now like how do you come back from it? And like you said, at some point, if it's disordered eating or it's something that's actually causing physical harm to somebody, you can't bounce back from that. I mean, it could be life or death. It's
Exactly.
disturbing.
And he's like passed out on camera on when he was going live
Oh
because of
God.
the drugs. So it's like really sad. And one of the things that like that they try to present themselves as super masculine, super straight males, and at the same time, a lot of it is gender confirmation, like surgery or attempts. You know how like a lot of times the alt right will bash against individuals that want if they want to change their gender expression, and they get surgery for that. Um,
Wait, they do? I've never heard of this. It's so weird.
yes, yes. But at the same time, when a man gets a surgery for like muscles or abs
Right.
or gets hair implants, I'm not pointing to him like I have hair implants. This is natural,
Those right
fortunately.
there, yeah.
But all that is gender confirmation surgery. Am I saying that wrong? Is it gender confirmation? I feel like it's something else.
Gender affirmation surgery, maybe?
Affirmation? I don't know. Clearly, I'm I need to brush up on this. Oh,
Yeah, so gender
but
confirmation surgery or gender
okay,
affirming. So we were both right. It
okay,
aligns a person's
perfect.
physical appearance and sexual characteristics with their gender identity. There you go.
So yes, which are breast augmentation surgery,
Right.
and there's a whole bunch of male stuff on the male side that they don't see it as that. When they do like a hair club for men and all that goodness. So just all that to say, when you're working on changing your appearance, you want to do it in a safe way,
Yeah.
and you don't want to make drastic, huge changes. I'm trying to do it in a safe way that I feel like is sustainable for the amount of time I'm going to do it, and that I'll stick to, and then I'm not introducing a whole lot of big sweeping changes that could be harmful for me. So we'll see. I'm not saying this is the right thing to do. There's literally no research that I've been able to find about it.
Well, that's
And
weird because we talk
yeah,
about health, sports, and fitness in ABA. Like, where's the fitness part or the
yeah.
health
I
part?
mean, there's been some stuff in other fields about like but it's like not exactly this, you know what I mean? And it came after this, but nobody's citing this, and this was just one person doing this one thing, and they
Right.
said that it worked. I read it in the book, but you also have to be like, did that, are you being honest, you know what I mean? Like, just because I read it in the book doesn't mean it's true. I'm looking at you, Bible. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, share, and
Whoa.
subscribe. Comment. Comment to another person's comment.